Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here with us today. My name is Felix Fernandez, and I'm the Community Engagement Associate at the Resolution Project. It is my pleasure to introduce today's panel on the future of climate action, organized by our wonderful volunteers on the Resolution Leadership Council. Today's discussion will be moderated and led by James Mwangi, the Executive Director of the Dalberg Group, an advisory firm that focuses on inclusive and sustainable growth. James leads integration and innovation across Dalberg's 5 core businesses, which together employ 600 staff in 27 locations across the globe, including 13 countries in Africa. He currently serves on the boards of the Skoll Foundation, One Acre Fund, the Global Center for Pluralism, Old Mutual Limited, and the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority. He is joined today by 3 of our Resolution Fellows, Xiao-Yue Gong, Guillaume Dabré, and Gerard Ndayishimiye. Guillaume is the founder of GreenFaso, a waste management and environmental protection social venture in Burkina Faso. As a first-generation college student, he completed a bachelor's degree in diplomacy and international relations from Tamkang University in Taiwan, and he recently accepted an offer to become a Schwarzman Scholar at Tsinghua University in China, where he hopes to explore China-Africa relations while focusing on environmental protection and sustainable growth. Gerard is the co-founder of the Rwanda Youth Initiative for Agricultural Transformation, also called RYIAT. He graduated from Earth University in Costa Rica with a bachelor's degree in agricultural science and natural resources management. Since March, Gerard is interning at One Acre Fund to improve the lives of farmers in Africa and to continue solving the problems of the agricultural sector while learning how to run and manage a nonprofit organization. Finally, Xiao-Yue is a PhD candidate at MIT. She is the founder and CEO of Aeolian, a social venture that protects people from severe indoor air pollution in cities through smart IoT design. Her current research is in algorithms and machine learning for supply chain optimization. With the introductions done, I'll pass it over to you, James. Please take it away.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you all for joining, and Felix and the Resolution team, thank you for this opportunity to sit down for a conversation with 3 truly impressive young social entrepreneurs on a topic that in some ways sounds narrow, but is in many ways increasingly all-encompassing, which is climate change and climate action, and how the opportunities and challenges around that affect not just ventures that seek to tackle climate action, but really every single economic and social activity that we will embark on over the next few decades. So as you noted, Felix, I helped found and have worked at Dalberg now for going on 20 years, which is scary to acknowledge. But one of the most telling things in that journey, as you said, we've sought to focus on inclusive and sustainable growth. And maybe where I'll start the conversation and maybe anchor it as I turn to each of our 3 panelists today. What's been interesting is originally there was this framing that, you know, inclusive growth and sustainable growth or sustainable communities were in tension with each other. You could either focus on addressing poverty and raising people out of it, or on preserving the environment and fighting climate change. And I think over the last few years, it's become clear that those things are so tightly intertwined that every business plan, from that of the biggest energy company in the world to that of the humblest new startup, is going to have an entire section around how does climate change affect that business? How might that business affect climate action? And what opportunities, challenges, or new risks might arise related to climate? Luckily, the 3 entrepreneurs here have enterprises that are already very conscious of this dynamic, and I'll turn to each of you in turn. Guillaume, I'll start with you, and the work that you do at GreenFaso. Clearly, you know, environmental stewardship is at the heart of that business. But I'd love to hear, how do you think about climate action in particular, or the role of the climate challenge, sitting or building a business in Burkina Faso and thinking about what the long-term impact journey might be there. Like how does it intersect with the work that you're doing at a high level? And please describe some of what GreenFaso does so others can have a better sense as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I would start from the second part of the question to make it a bit clear about what GreenFaso is doing. And first of all, we are not acting or doing something in Burkina for now. It started in Taipei. The idea initially was supposed to be ran in Burkina, but since I was studying in Taipei and the time to come back, we said, why don't we try it here and see, learn the lessons, learn from the mistakes, and come back to Burkina to apply. So that's the first thing I would like to mention. And in Taipei, we sat and thought about the topic of environment, climate action, but then we came up with a plan that just focuses on education, the educational aspect of this action. And we identified elementary and high school students because we thought that was this segment is, if we want to have a long-term impact, it's good to start working with this segment. First, try to understand their understanding of climate action itself, and then see what we can do. So from the first event in Taipei, we just realized that 90% of the students already knew what's going on. Okay. They know about the climate situation, pollution, and all this. Then we had to change the strategy and go towards action-oriented activities and workshops. So we came up with like events, workshops such as visiting existing companies, right, that are probably having a footprint in the environmental protection, let them understand actually what's being done in the real world. But in addition to that, before we go, for example, when we go to the school, we'll ask them not to use any plastic. Try your best not to use plastic. Or and one of the events, but unfortunately was stopped by COVID-19. We had to go and actually collect the trash from beach cleanup, and coupling these events with the broader spectrum of topics on sustainable development goals. So we took these goals and looked into it and say, what can we do that's related to the environment and climate action? So we defined topics such as sustainable growth, right, related to ending poverty, or just life and the sea and all this. So that's basically what we have done in Taipei. And coming back to the question to see how this action can work in Burkina, the first thing we realized is that there's a big difference between how this is perceived in Taipei and how it is perceived in Burkina. We went to the schools and talked about the topic, but let's say asking people not to use plastic is super hard here compared to Taipei. So we had to focus more on the educational side in Burkina as well. So in terms of long-term view, it's interesting that right now, the information is available about this issue. When I was in elementary school, I didn't know anything about climate change. In high school, yes, I started reading a bit about it, but now I feel like this generation, at least those elementary school and high school students, have this advantage to know about the topic and start acting on it. And if one day they become policymakers or business leaders, I hope they will include this in their business models and policy orientations. And I hope this answers the question.
It does. I had a lot of follow-ups on this particular point around questions like, how do you combat misinformation? How do you engage young people and so on? But I think you touched on a good chunk of that, because what I'm hearing from you, which is something I've observed myself, even when I look at my kids in their school, is this is no longer, certainly at the generational level you're talking about climate change and the need for climate action. It doesn't sound like it's a controversial point the younger you get. But I do wonder, to your point about how they may use this knowledge, is waiting till they're policymakers and quote unquote decision makers too late, given the clock that we are on, and how are they being equipped with tools that might allow them to step on the field a little bit earlier in the game?
Sure, definitely waiting would be late. if they don't start it now, we're not sure that they will do it later on. So what we did is that we work with ambassadors. In each school, we have a group of ambassadors, and they have a kind of, we have a follow-up, a way to follow up on their actions. Let's say now I'm not in Taipei. We came up with metrics to see what they are doing, even without any GreenFaso member there. It's because we partnered with the schools, making sure that this student club or organization that works with us is actually continuing what we started. So we're using this ambassadors platform to make sure that right now, after the workshops, the students are using this and translating them into daily actions to combat or to fight climate action. It could just be like, let's say today I did one day in a month, I decided not to use plastic, right? Or just like this. And we have those small metrics just to check that they're doing it. And the schools in Taipei, for example, the school is willing to use this as a credit. So it allows the students to be involved.
Great. Well, that's a good point at which to pivot to you, Xiao-Yue. Your enterprise AO was focused on, or is focused on, indoor air quality. And one thing that strikes me is it's been interesting being in conversations with policymakers, investors, and others who are, we're slowly realizing that the dynamics of thinking about pollution are related to, but are distinct from, the dynamics of thinking about climate and climate change in some ways. I'd be interested in hearing your reflections, because all of us are being affected by climate change, but you had actually set out to do something very specific around indoor air quality that in some ways is very distinct, but in other ways is subtly connected. And I'd love to hear your reflection on that.
Yes, thank you, James. I think, yes, the connection is relatively subtle, maybe compared to the other panelists, because AO, formerly named as Aeolian, really cares about the impact of climate change and environmental change on humans. So the goal of Aeolian and AO were to basically protect people's health from the consequences that might have resulted at least partially from climate change and maybe also from environmental change or human actions. So basically Aeolian, it's Aeolian and then AO. So Aeolian first started when I was in undergrad, and I had a roommate who was a US student, but we were studying in China, and she fell very sick because of the air pollution in Shanghai at that time. And she actually had to drop out of the school that we were in and went back to the States and to further her education elsewhere. So that really made a big impact on me, because I grew up in Shanghai and I did not realize how severe the problem is, because I grew up in that environment and I was very used to it. Knowing that, I first started developing a smart home system that basically is designed to help you smartly purify the air in your home. But then I feel like this will be a very privileged system for individuals and individual families, while there's a huge population in either China or a lot of other developing cities, countries, areas, where a lot of people might not have the luxury to have a system like a smart artificial intelligence system to themselves. So on a greater scale, what do we want to do? So that from there, Aeolian gradually transformed to AO, is that we gradually want to consider the public indoor spaces, including schools and shopping malls, restaurants, cinemas, so all of these spaces. And so when you're thinking about public indoor spaces, inevitably you're coming into contact with policymakers, and also you really need to think about your audience, because there is definitely going to be resistance in the beginning. like we can talk on a greater scale. Just imagine a government or a local government or a local establishment, for example, a restaurant or shopping mall or school. They might not want to manifest, like show people that they have bad air quality, even though it will help people take precautions and take prevention measures, etc. So you'll definitely meet some resistance there. And one thing that really is like an entry point for a new venture is like you need to think about who are the people who are most impacted by these and they are most sensitive to this kind of either like environmental change or like the health consequences. So for example, for us, we kind of focused and narrowed in first to like new parents because they'll care a lot about their newborn children, and also like pregnant women themselves, and also elderly and just young kids. So that will also kind of narrow down the different organizations or institutes or just public spaces that you want to talk to. Yeah, so so from that point on, basically we're like in contact and trying to get access to these groups, because it is not like this kind of access doesn't come just randomly or naturally. Like you kind of need to like get connected to one audience of that group, and maybe that group that one audience in that group will be able to connect you with more people that are similar to that person. So yeah, that's basically the approach we're taking. And I think was it, I think it's either Guillermo sorry, yeah, sorry, I wasn't pronouncing the name right. So I think can you repeat your name again?
It's Guillaume, I think.
Yeah.
Guillaume.
Yeah.
Guillaume. Okay, sorry. But feel free to pronounce my name wrong. Like, but yeah. So I think you also mentioned the COVID-19's like basically yeah, it also made like a impact on our venture. Is that
So I was actually going to come in there, Xiao-Yue, because you know you're talking about indoor air quality, particularly in public spaces. That puts you right in the middle of a whole set of things that weren't things that people weren't thinking about indoor air quality in public spaces as much 18 months ago as they are now, but also rolling out something into indoor air spaces or public spaces not necessarily as easy as it might have been in the old business as usual.
Definitely.
How is that all playing out, and what does that mean for you as
so we basically ran into like huge setbacks, and basically our connections were kind of cut since the pandemic happened. I mean, we still have access to the groups, like for example the WeChat groups of new parents that we previously somehow found a way into, but like a lot of our other connections were cut because first of all we're now focusing on public indoor spaces, and there was a long period of time where people are not allowed to leave their homes, and let alone like public indoor spaces. And also people are really encouraged to be outdoor, which is something AO or Aeolian has not previously really focused on at all. Yeah, so basically like people are not, also like because of the virus, people are a lot more concerned about safety about that virus, as opposed to like the effects of air pollution, which can be also severe, but it's more chronicle and it takes a longer time to see. And I think people just have other concerns on their mind right now. So basically a lot of the connections we made were lost, and there were like huge setbacks. Yeah, but that also encouraged us to think about what other things AO and Aeolian is aiming to do, because our mission is to safeguard people's health from the effects of air pollution, etc. So there are also other things. So previously we never thought about, for example, outdoor space. It's just because, not that we don't care, we definitely care about like the overall climate change and environmental change, but it just felt like kind of too hard as a problem. Like it will slowly take effect if like for example, Guillaume mentioned like reducing plastic usage, etc. It's just that it might take a longer time to see the effects. And because our mission is to safeguard people's health, if we put our limited energy into that space, like we might not be able to safeguard people's health like in an effective and timely manner, at least for now. So, but like because of COVID-19, and we're kind of like paused on that aspect. Now we're thinking about how do we, as a social venture, connect to the society as a whole. It includes like, even though we want to like, we are products that will help you basically protect yourself from air pollution, but we want there to be less air pollution to protect you from in total. So maybe we should like connect things related to, for example, just as a very simple example, like maybe a number of products will relate to us like planting a tree somewhere, or like some like very simple examples that we have thought of, but maybe we do still require more thoughts on how to make the venture more effective, at least like for now, while it is not a priority on people's minds. Yeah.
Well, I think an interesting effect that your point makes in some ways is COVID-19 and the pandemic have done an interesting thing that climate will do even more, which is showing how you can't really separate these fields. You can say you are interested in indoor domestic spaces, but you realize that it's all embedded within a system. And we've all gotten over the last year and a half a lesson in how many systems are actually very tightly connected to each other, and a failure in one part of the system shows up as tensions in another part or demands in another. So that's an interesting kind of dynamic that I was thinking about as you were talking about the pivots you've made, as well as the ways that things that weren't considered in scope kind of keep on forcing their way into your scope in a way, and into what you have to at least consider if you're going to be viable, which I think is true of any entrepreneur or any social innovator. Gerard, let's turn to your work. One thing I noted is that we are both affiliated with the 1 Acre Fund. But the other thing is you have been looking at opportunities in the agriculture space. And agriculture is one of those things, very often when people talk about climate action, I used to think when I heard the term climate action until a few years ago, that, all right, now we're going to talk about electric cars and clean power generation and no more coal. And the more you really look at the humanity's carbon footprint, the more you realize two things. The first one is agriculture, and improving productivity of agriculture in many parts of the world has meant increasing the amount of carbon intensity of agriculture. And at the same time, so productive agriculture tends to be climate damaging agriculture. And at the same time, climate change is really hitting basic subsistence agriculture. If you're a farmer waiting for rain, you don't have a schedule anymore, and so on. So I would guess that climate is affecting both what you're trying to do and the ground on which you are doing it. How are you thinking about that in your various endeavors in Rwanda?
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, I will start with interesting data. Agriculture has been playing a big, I can't say big percentage according to other kinds of businesses. It contributes between 19 to 20% to the total greenhouse gases, according to our World Bank. This gives us an insight and understand why agriculture should be sustainable, why agriculture should be done in a way that conserves the environment for future generation. So that is after going through different research and looking the negative consequences that climate change has imposed to our country, Rwanda. Heavy floods, short but erratic rainfall that later on bring droughts, has made us, my team and I, to sit and find a way to train and transform communities with agriculture tool. And that is when we designed an integrated sustainable model farm, which is a training model farm where local farmers come and learn different practices that can help them to overcome the climatic consequences. So that is when we have different kinds of sub-projects in our project, where we train farmers on organic farming. And organic farming helps the farmers. We combine the crop production and animal production to make compost, to make biogas in form of waste management. So we integrate all the systems in one place, and we reduce the impact that agriculture can cause to the climate change.
Great. So one of the exciting things there is you're going right at it, right? You have the numbers with you. The impact is hitting you, and you're trying to be more climate smart. As you're trying to recruit farmers to this new way of thinking, how do you convince them of it? Are they mostly younger farmers who already get that climate change is going to be an issue, so you don't have to convince them? Or do you have to kind of make an argument for why to farm this way and not another way? Is it that they're able to get a better income? Is it just that they're doing it in order to be good for the country, the environment, etc.? What's the hook? How do you get particularly a new generation of farmers to really be thinking climate first in a way that makes sense for them?
That is interesting, yeah. And that is one of the challenges that when I was back in school, in my undergraduate school, we used to go to the communities. And actually this knowledge and the skills, I got it from Art University, thanks to MasterCard and Art University to support me up to this stage. One of the challenges that we face is behavior change. Behavior change is something that we always work to solve, or to takes time to change the minds of people to cope up with a new change in their lives. So data are variable, like I said, in Rwanda in 2005, we had issues where in some of the districts in Rwanda were hit hard with climatic consequences, and according to RYIAT, which is Rwanda Environmental Management Authority, 20 people died and 4,000 households were 4,000 people had to be moved because of flood. And in addition, 706 houses were destroyed. I will bring this to understand the impact that climate change has caused, and why people, it's not hard for them to easily adapt this kind of model that we are bringing to them. Land hogs in Rwanda is 0.3 hectares. If 635 hectares are flooded, you can understand how many people are negatively affected by the climate change. So giving the data and with the help of the government, showing pictures and videos in the news changes the behavior and helps us in the process of pushing this movement of sustainable agriculture to our people, not only in Rwanda, but worldwide, since the impacts are visible, not imaginable.
Indeed. Thank you, Gerard. So firstly, for those of you watching on Facebook, if you want to participate in the dialogue as we continue the discussion, please drop questions in the comments section, and they'll be fed to us, and we can get some responses about it. Maybe a question I'll pose to all of you in turn, and we'll start with you, Guillaume, because it's been a while since we heard your voice. You know, so you've all been on an entrepreneurial journey. You're at that intersection. You're both learning and innovating and so on. And it's been an interesting period to be doing that in terms of what's going on in the world and so on. For people watching this and saying, well, how do I really think about climate vis-a-vis my own kind of entrepreneurial journey? What are any lessons or observations you can offer? And these can be, hey, definitely do this or don't do that. Or they can be struggles that you wanted to share, the ways that intersection between climate and your venture idea or your entrepreneurial instinct, how are they intersecting, and what suggestions would you have for the people listening in? We'll go Guillaume, Xiao-Yue, and then Gerard, you'll go last. Over.
All right, interesting and hard question at the same time, because I think our idea is kind of GreenFaso, right? When we look at it, is kind of appreciating what's happening right now. Because when we look at the data after the lockdowns around the world, in terms of the benefits.
Oops.
So while Guillermo is stuck, could you like repeat the question? Because I actually didn't hear. It was stuck for me, so I actually didn't hear the part of the question.
Not a problem. The question was, as you're thinking about the journey and being a social entrepreneur in the face of climate change in this moment of uncertainty, people who are listening to this are probably asking themselves, how do I get started, or what do I do? And I thought you sharing how it has affected or impacted you, and it could be either an insight you've learned or a question, a big question you have, would be interesting for them to hear. And then Guillaume will come back to you. We lost you early in your comments. We'll come back to you for a second take in a moment.
Oh, Guillaume could continue if he wants to. I mean, either way is fine for me, but maybe he was talking already, so.
Guillaume, do you want to try again while it's still fresh?
Sure. I hope my Wi-Fi would let me do it. Yes. I was saying that if lockdowns are good for the environment, then it's good for GreenFaso. But the big lesson that we learned is how to be resilient, because from COVID, we just stopped everything. Because most of our events were like outdoor, visiting companies and having workshops. So we had to stop. So if I have a really lesson or a key takeaway for those who are watching, it's be resilient in your business model, whether it's a social venture, for-profit organization. How resilient can you be? And on this specific topic, how is climate change, embedded in the business model? So it shouldn't be like, okay, I'm starting a business and then I would be thinking about corporate social responsibility or the externalities or impact on the environment. How is actually the idea of protecting the environment involved in my business model? I think that's the big question that I have right now, and anyone can think about it the same way, involving and directly having business models that are related to the protection of the environment.
Oh, I think James, you're muted still. But...
Oh, sorry. I was just passing it to you. I was passing you the mic.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah, so as I have previously already talked about a bit, basically AO or Aeolian have gone through multiple pivots throughout the journey. So even before COVID happened, we've already went through different iterations of the model of the venture. So I think personally, I think, at least for me, being willing and ready to pivot is kind of important, at least to like early on stage venture. I mean, even for very established big companies, I believe many of them also pivot from time to time. It really depends on the mission of the company and also the specific areas they're in. So I think like for social venture, a lot of it does depend on people's needs. So for example, for Aeolian, while COVID-19 is happening, people really shifted their attention to these the severe effects of viruses and like staying home and being safe instead of like going out and enjoy their life without like being impacted by indoor air pollution. So if we put ourselves in their shoes, do we think it is a reasonable time for them to be concerned about air quality right now? So we cannot convince ourselves that it is right now the mission of Aeolian is a priority. So we kind of like put it on a pause and think about other directions and ways that or future developments of the venture. I believe for a lot of areas and a lot of ventures, timing is very critical. So people's needs and understanding and values kind of shift throughout time, and it is quite critical for the timing of the venture to align with what people are thinking about and what people are concerned with at the time. Of course, there are instances where people just do not realize the severity of the problem, and the venture's part of the goal is to actually educate people. Yeah, I think to be able to make a venture viable and successful, having the patience to wait or having the power to kind of accelerate and power through if the timing happens to be really right and you really need to get to some deadline or something. Yeah, it really depends on the situation. And I believe a lot of other young entrepreneurs or people who are in this space are running into a lot of setbacks. I know that in the past year, basically the majority of startups in 2020 failed, at least in China. So yeah, so I think it's very common, and hopefully there are other things that you are also passionate or care about at a time that you can kind of shift towards temporarily and then come back when the timing is right. Yeah.
So there's something in both of what you've said about being anti-fragile, either being able to adjust the way that you're doing what you're doing, or in some cases say, well, actually there's a shock underway right now. Maybe let's pause for a moment. Gerard, what have you taken away from this period? What's either a big question you're struggling with or an insight you'd want to share with people from the journey these last 18 months?
Yeah, thank you very much, James. Yeah, it's been a journey, a complicated journey. Let me put it that way. As young and organization in early stage, it has been so complicated to us because you are dealing with farmers, and most of them are they are not technological whatever experts. It takes time for us to communicate, like when the social distancing and lockdown. It has been a journey, a complicated one, because the impact, the pace that we wanted to move on has been affected so much, and most of the objectives have been delayed to achieve. So that is in summary.
Thanks for that. Maybe to close out. So you've each shared. It's been bumpy, and I haven't had a conversation like this with any decision maker, entrepreneur, innovator, or leader that hasn't said, this has been a testing period in some ways. Maybe the way to end the conversation is to ask, what gives each of you hope? And it's a short reflection. And Gerard, will start with you this time, and we'll go the other way around. Looking ahead, what gives you hope or energizes you? And particularly around the role of enterprise and entrepreneurs and business in the world of and social enterprise towards climate action. But generally, what's
Okay, thank you. Yeah, what pushes me and gives me hope is the fact that worldwide political leaders and governments are pushing this movement of climate change. So decisions, policies are being made to support this movement. They are not seated. They are not just watching. So this gives me hope. The Rwandan government has taken big step ahead of us, and that gives me hope that what I'm doing, the government is also looking into it, that this may bring a solution. We like in Rwanda, we no longer use plastic bags, which is something that we can appreciate to the government that has been causing environmental impact that later on led to climate change. Another thing is Rwandan government is pushing conservation agriculture, which is something also part of a sub-project that RYIAT is pushing to implement. Thank you.
James, you're muted.
Oh, again, as you can tell, I'm showing my age here, but over to you. What gives you hope?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, there are a lot of like irritating things in this space that makes you kind of angry. But in terms of the things that give you hope or give me hope, of course, like there are a lot of people who actually care and take action. So that's definitely one thing, and I think Gerard talked about it as well. But one particular thing that I want to mention is the advance of technology. So what does that do? So a lot of times when we think about, for example, mitigating environmental pollution, etc., or stop using plastics, etc., it might come with a cost of like economy sacrifice in terms of economic sacrifice. But the advance of technology and artificial intelligence. I mean, there are a lot of artificial intelligence that are not very intelligent, but they're getting more and more intelligent. So I feel like there is definitely some juice here to be squeezed. So they're making it more and more optimal for everyone. Kind of, it's like in the Industrial Revolution, the productivity of humans increased a lot, and then everyone can kind of get more food to eat than before. So this is something that could bring like a win-win situation for all sides and for all considerations. So this kind of advances in technology can kind of at least reduce the economic sacrifice, etc., for these kind of social changes and make them more viable and sustainable, make like the social changes more viable and sustainable, and to do so. Yeah, that's basically what I want to say.
Thank you. Guillaume?
Yes, I feel like I'm picking up on what they've said, right? And the both of them said something really interesting, tech or policy. For me, yeah, I will insist on policy, but before that, these kind of conversations are giving me hope. We're having this conversation now, and everywhere I believe these kind of conversations are being held. This means that the topic is kind of at the center of mainstream. So when we look at policy as well, especially China, because I'm really interested in Chinese policy in that field, the green financing, for example, or even great players like US stepping in to do something is really giving hope, because policy is really a big driver. But yeah, in addition to that, of course, seeing people in their daily life, showing interest in doing something on climate change is really what's feeding my hope. And yeah, I'll stop here.
You all have made it very easy to moderate and close out, because you've said the state and government are waking up, the technological tools are here, and the change makers are talking to each other and exploring opportunities. I can't think of a better place at which to leave it, and come back to you, Felix.
Thank you, James. And thank you to our Resolution Fellows for this engaging and inspiring conversation. We're always so glad to have you with us to share your expertise and the work you do every day. So thank you everybody for tuning in. The Resolution Summer Panel Series will continue in July with a discussion on women's empowerment and gender equality. I hope you will join us for that conversation too. Thank you everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks
everyone.
Bye-bye.